Hey, what's up, and welcome to this episode of EST, the podcast for established church leaders by established church leaders. I almost forgot who we were. What's up, Sam?
Hey, I'm an established church leader. You're an established church leader.
I
And
am
everyone
a
listening
very-
is likely at an established church. Although, if you are a church planter tuning in, why? But actually, we're we're glad you're here. We're really glad you're tuning in. Hey, every successful church plant ultimately becomes established. So you might as
true.
well get out ahead of the curve and tell all of your church planting friends to tune in, because this is the world that is heading your way if you're not already.
It is. It is. It's not cool, but it is coming. So,
Yeah, well, I think we've got a neat subject, and thank you to the Twitter world, or X. It's weird to say like X world because that has some different connotations.
yeah,
So
I'm
we
just
got
going to
this-
call it Twitter world. I'm still calling it Twitter. I'm stuck.
Yeah, me too. I don't like the connotations associated with that. So in Twitter, this idea came to us from Twitter, if I'm not mistaken. Josh, you put the question out there, so
I did.
Is this one from the Twitter world?
It is from the Twitter, and you will not believe who it is that shared this idea.
I
It's
don't.
Luke Simmons, the same guy
Oh.
that we talked. Yeah, we stole one of his ideas, and now he's just giving them to us. And I still don't even think he's heard the episode we did
No, he wouldn't
about
have.
him. Yeah.
Wow.
So this is Luke's just got great ideas. He just gave it to
So
us.
the second time Luke has helped us out, and he still doesn't even know that we're talking about him because we record these, oh my god, because of the recording schedule.
Right. So he has
Hey,
no
Luke.
idea.
Okay,
Luke,
well that's good.
we need to get him on the show at some point.
Yeah, we do. Hey, if you haven't heard about church teams, you need to call them. You need to reach out to them. They do church management software incredibly well. They've been a sponsor of the show for a long time, and we are certainly grateful to them for continuing to sponsor the show. They can help churches of all sizes. They're great with larger churches, but they especially, they do small churches especially well. So I know many of you listening maybe say, do I really need church management software? Is there a company that will really care about my church? My church isn't big, or, hey, my budget may be small. Church Teams is awesome. So they have plans that scale with your church in terms of pricing. They have a structure that scales with your church. So whether you're a church of 10,000 or 10, I mean, they can help you. They do all sorts of services, and they do them all well. It's great to have everything under one umbrella, which is what Church Teams does. And you can find out more about their offer at est.church. So go to est.church. It'll take you right to a landing page. Fill out that form. They've got a free offer there. I got a trial that they'll give you, and there's no risk. It's kind of nice when you can do that. So thank you, Church Teams.
Yeah. Okay, so I got this. This is the topic. It was sort of the idea of building momentum in a declined or plateau church. That's what Luke gave us. I want to take it a slightly different direction, but it's still similar idea. So let's say you are taking a new church, which I recently did, and there is a window of opportunity there to build momentum, and you want to build momentum. So this will apply to that scenario. But it also still applies to the idea of, let's just say you've been pastoring a church 7-10 years, and it's just sort of, just to be honest, it's gotten stale. It's a little stagnant, however you say that word. It's just stale. So what do you do? Is there anything you can do to manufacture momentum? Before we talk about these, we've got like 5 keys to manufacture momentum. Sam, is this taboo? Are we doing something sleazy here, or is this
No.
too marketing? What would you say to the person that says this is just you're creating smoke and there is no fire?
I can understand why somebody might say that, but they're wrong. I mean, I get it. You don't want to be.
Yeah.
Listen, the church does not need any more gimmicks. The church does not need icky sales tactics. But that's not what we're talking about. We talk practical stuff. If you're like, how do I turn my church around? If your answer is more theology, Well, you're probably not going to turn. I mean, this realistically, you're not going to turn that church around. There are some practical things that you need to do. Now, please do not compromise doctrine. I say that as
Right.
somebody who believes every word that is in the Bible is true. I say that as somebody who has a very high view of Scripture. But yeah, there are some practical things you need to do. No, they're not icky. And just if they are, then don't do them. So I think
Yeah,
you have to do some of this stuff.
I was explaining to somebody yesterday this show, EST, and the reality is you learn so much in seminary. It's built a certain way to teach you theology and things. There's just so much you don't learn in seminary. I am assuming in all of our episodes that you are going to take care of the theology, that you're going to preach the word, that you're going to disciple people. That is a basic assumption to EST. This stuff happens with that after that stuff has been taken care of. So that would be my answer. I don't think it's cheesy or slimy. I think this is just good stewardship of some of the different realms outside of the theology of the church or the pulpit.
Yeah, yeah, completely agree. We are making assumptions on the show, and I know we mentioned that a long, long time ago, and those of you who have been listening know that because you likely know where Josh and I stand. We both have a high view of the sovereignty of God. We have a high view of Scripture.
Right.
That being said, you got to get up in the morning. You got to actually do something. And doing something is more than just, well, I'm going to study my Bible. Yeah, please do. But there's way more to leading a church than that. So let's talk about it. So, all right, the real momentum driving comeback churches. So these are some practical things that we see right now. So 10 years from now, if you're listening to this, I don't know if some of these things will work. Some of them will because I think they're biblical. But the first one's very simple. Start thinking outward. You as the pastor, if you're like, I got nobody in my church doing evangelism. I got nobody in my church reaching outward. I got nobody in my church bringing their friends. Okay, well, it's not nobody because you're a somebody and you can do it. So you have at least one.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this, you got
Right.
at least one. Start with yourself, start with a friend, start with a deacon, start with an elder, start with a staff person, whatever. One of the first steps for West Bradenton thinking outwardly was getting the staff to do it. I won't say we were an inward church when I got here. I would say we were an introverted church, meaning people very much kept to themselves. And I understand introversion is a personality, and I don't want to imply too much negativity around somebody's personality because your personality is your personality, and you can't help that. But I hope people understand when I say it was an introverted church. We just weren't very outgoing. We didn't go to people. We waited for people to come to us. If they came to us, we were friendly, but we really weren't going out of our way to go to them. And all that change started with the staff. So I would say in order to build momentum, you first have to do the work of inviting people, ministering in the community, doing the work of evangelism. And even if it's one or two of you, it will work. You can build momentum with just a couple of people if you're doing the work of evangelism.
Yeah, I totally agree. One of the phrases that I'll say regularly are go and invite people to Jesus and tell them about your church. So I just kind of tie it both together because sometimes we think that inviting folks to church is the same as evangelism, and that's not true. Evangelism is actually sharing the gospel, using words and sharing the gospel of Jesus, that we are broken, we are sinners, and Jesus died for us, took that penalty upon himself, and when you accept that, you're made right with God. So that's what people need to go and to share. The way that when we talk about the area of momentum building is just begin to act like your church is worth something somebody would want to invite people to and resource them because you believe it is. I believe it is. I believe that First Baptist Church Louisville, a lot of people should invite their friends, should come and check it out. It's kind of fun. It's exciting. It's a good thing. And so I am inviting people. I share those stories. I invited this person, and I'll get on Facebook and say, hey, pray for Karen. I invited her today. Here's her story, some of her story. She says she'll be here this next Sunday. So just that sort of idea. Also resourcing people with invite cards. You can take things like Easter or a new sermon series kickoff or Christmas and do a very, very boiled down version of like who's your neighbor or that kind of idea of an outreach, intentional outreach. Say, this week we're writing down the name of one person we're going to invite next week. Bring it up here to the altar or the steps. Pray for them. And when you leave that card on the steps, pick up an invite card and go take it to that person for our Easter service. That's something we're going to do here at First Baptist Church, Louisville. So just begin to, like Sam says, to model inviting and evangelism, and then resource the church to do that. So much momentum happens when you just get the people, push them out the doors and say, okay, you got a week, invite somebody and bring them back tomorrow. Yeah.
We gather to go.
Gather to scatter.
We meet to part and part. What's the phrase? The Southern Baptist theological. We meet to part and part to meet. I don't know. I never get it right. I graduated from.
I always say just gather to scatter is the one.
Gather.
That
I like that better. Yeah.
I didn't make that up. Yeah. Yeah. So just teach it and model it. So you've been there for 7 years. Now say, hey, look, guys, we got to get serious about this. We need to invite people. And so you can share the stats. You can talk about neighbors and all that, but just start modeling it, start resourcing them. You're going to see some momentum grow.
And when that one person comes, your neighbor comes, celebrate the victory. So part of building momentum is every little bit of progress that you make. It's like, well, I'm taking 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Well, when you take the 1 step forward, celebrate it. Tell the church, focus on it. It's our first baptism in 15 years. Okay, well, you can get in front of everyone and say, well, it's our first baptism in 15 years, you people. Or you can have a big party. Churches that build momentum, churches that make a comeback, are the ones that take every little victory, celebrate them in a big way, and point people to the things that are worthwhile. You become what you celebrate. That's the bottom line.
That's right.
In terms of cultural change, you become what you celebrate. So if you're always talking about and pointing to the negative things, if you're leading from a pessimistic posture, you'll never take your church to a better place. You have to point people to those little victories and say, this is what we're about, and keep coming back to that.
Absolutely. And you can share these in newsletters. Look for wins. Ask people to share the wins. Start off meetings. Maybe you start your business meeting or your church conference, whatever it is, with, we're just going to give some time to celebrate some wins. What's something great that God is doing in you or in this church? Maybe in your small group, your Sunday school class, in a ministry, something like that. We had a meeting a couple Sunday nights ago, and we had a young lady walk around with a microphone, and people just stood up. And they said, this is a small thing. I invited my hairdresser and she came. Or I invited this person and they were here. And everybody clapped and everybody celebrated. As a pastor or a church leader, you probably hear about these wins quite a bit. And you should just start every meeting you can talking about those celebration wins. But give the members an opportunity to share their wins. I went as far as saying, look, I love hearing these stories, and I love when you tell me. Please keep telling me. But please start posting these things on your social media. Just start sharing this very same thing. I invited a friend. They came to church. I want you to come to church with both of us this next week. That is such a huge thing. Celebrate the wins because it's fun. It's exciting. It's something that I want to be a part of. Everybody wants to be a part of a winning team. And you are a part of a gospel-centered, Jesus Christ worshiping church. You're on the winning team. So celebrate some of those wins.
Yeah. We've made our business meeting this. So we have quarterly business meetings. And while we still hand out our financials, we do membership reports, we vote, we're a congregational church. We are not doing away with that. What we are doing is more testimonies, more focus on these kinds of stories. And it was our moderator that came up with the idea. He's like, listen, the only business of the church should be the Great Commission. So we should just focus on Great Commission work at our business meetings. And I was like, that's brilliant. Jack May, I got to give Jack credit. We're about to ordain him as a deacon. I'm really excited about that.
Good job, Jack.
And he's an amazing guy. And so while we still do the business of the church and we're not hiding anything, what we are pushing to the forefront are the celebratory things that make the church what it is. And it's been overwhelmingly received positive. We still have a few more meetings this year, so we'll see how they go. But you got to celebrate those small wins. Which
I was just going to say, you can put these in sermons. You can put this in the newsletter. You can put it in your business. Look for ways to celebrate these wins. When you hear them, use it as an illustration and repeat it multiple times. Tell that story 2 or 3 times, like a proud grandfather. Tell every room that you get into for the next month about this small win, and it'll build. I promise you, it will build. Which you were about to say, Sam, piggybacks
Yeah, yeah.
right into the
Piggybacks to the
next
next
concept.
one, building a culture of gratitude. Please, thank you. Hey, that was a kind gesture. I want to encourage you. Writing a handwritten note, saying things publicly. I love to do that now. I used to think that it would cause people to be embarrassed, and it does, but it's a good kind of embarrassment where like I basically call somebody out in some sort of public setting, a meeting, or even in a sermon sometimes if I feel like it'll really work and I think the person will receive it halfway well. I just say that you did really good here. Like, you did. Thank you. Like this is something people need to know about because a lot of people won't brag on themselves. The people that are really serving well in the church often are the same ones that would never think about bragging on themselves. The reason that they
Right.
serve well is because they don't have that attitude. So you've got to brag for them. And part of having a culture of gratitude is when the key leaders of the church, lead pastor especially, is going around saying thank you publicly to as many people as possible.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a big believer in gratitude. I'm a big believer in saying thank you and acknowledging that the success of the church is only very small portion on me and my preaching. A lot of it has to do much more, of course, with Holy Spirit's guidance, but then these people who serve faithfully. So, convictionally, I think you should regularly walk through the children's space and tell people who are volunteering in kids ministry, thank you for doing this. You should go high five the choir. I think that you should stand up and if somebody did something, even if it's a small thing, just say, we were going to do it over here, but one of the staff people, they had a great idea. We moved it to here. Just thanks for that. And that's it. You just, as much as possible, constantly thank other people and then teach them to do it. So at my previous church, we had a brag wall, and it was just an opportunity to write something one of the other staff people did that was great, and just write it on it ended up sticking to our refrigerator. So you do that, and then you read it out loud. As we did in a previous episode, some cards that all pastors should be writing. One of them was thank you cards. Thank you for giving. Thank you for attending. Those sort of thank you cards. Just make it a part of who you are. And the reality is, I think these things build momentum, but I'm really actually kind of convictional about all of them, doing it all the time. I think we should always be evangelistic. I think we should always celebrate small wins. I think we should always be a thank you.
Well, that's how you keep the momentum going. So Jim
Right.
Collins,
Definitely.
in his
You gotta
book
build it.
Good to
Yeah.
Great, talks about the flywheel, and getting the flywheel started takes a lot of hard pushes, and but once it gets going, and it starts building and spinning faster. Actually, more and more people want to jump in because it's easier, right? So
Yeah.
the first
Right,
part's the
right.
hardest part is pushing that flywheel and getting it going, and usually you don't have a whole lot of help. But once it gets going, it'll stay going, and the way that you keep the momentum is to just keep doing the same things that built the momentum.
Yeah,
Now, this next
absolutely.
one, you came up with this next one, talking about the refreshing the messaging that you present to your community. Now, this is a very broad sort of idea, but I think it's very, very important. I mean, it could be something as small as a logo change, which a lot of churches do. It could be something as big as the public persona of the pastor. But break this down a little bit on a practical way for those who are listening here.
Yeah, I would just say, okay, so if you're taking a new church, you may be tempted to change the name of the church or to get a brand new, fresh logo, and maybe it needs it. I mean, I've seen them that they really need that. I think when you're trying to build momentum, sometimes that's a change that needs to happen, maybe. I'm going to go ahead and agree with you. You need a new name, you need a new logo, but that's a change. What we're talking about here is building momentum, and changes often are going to cost you relationally than they're going to. It's not the same flywheel effect that we're talking about here. So it can be beneficial, though, to just refresh the logo or the name, and pick a font and make this more of your consistent font. Pick 2 or 3 colors. If you don't know what a style guide is, Google style guides and create a really basic style guide. You need a primary font, a secondary font, 2 or 3 primary colors, one secondary color, a clean logo. You tell your staff, you tell your church, this is the one that we use. Don't use the other one. Make sure that it looks right, that sort of stuff. You update your Facebook, you update your Google page, those sort of things. This clean branding. And if you're not good at this, look around at the churches that are good at this, maybe similar size, and just ask their leadership. Like, how did y'all do that? It's not as hard as you think it is, but when you're creating momentum, this is very helpful to get everybody on the same page visibly, as well as on marketing and branding. What do we call things? Do we call this the worship gathering? Do we call this the atrium? Do people know what an atrium is? Maybe we should use a slightly less church phrase. And nothing's bad. I'm not saying any of that's bad. It's just if you're trying to create momentum, sometimes just slight little changes like that will get everybody pushing in the same direction. And what happens when everybody's pushing in the same direction? More momentum, more strength going in the right direction.
The more visible, the better. So restriping the parking lot. I mean, just
That's a
that
good
alone.
thing. Yeah.
People, when people pull up the next Sunday, like, wow, that looks fresh. Painting a room. Those are some, physical
Power
plant
washing the
issues.
sidewalk. Yeah. Power washing the sidewalk. You can have 15 guys out there with their own power washers. Just go ahead and power wash that sidewalk, and they'll then do the brick and then do the playground. They love that job, and it's going to really help.
Landscaping can really refresh the outdoor look of your church. Hey, you know who's really, really good at this? Is Brady Shear, prochurchtools.com. He's also got a YouTube channel. So Brady Shear, Pro Church Tools. He is Canadian, so we won't hold that against him. But he does a really good job with all this stuff. If you are not following him, you should be on his newsletter and you should subscribe to his YouTube channel. So just saying. He's not sponsoring anything either. Yeah, I just love his stuff. So
let me just give you a tip. If you are a pastor or a church leader and you're regularly creating graphics or logos or branding and you're pushing this kind of stuff and you're not getting many compliments, you're probably not that great at it. And that's okay. You don't need to be strong in both of those. If you're creating these things and people are stealing it, if they're stealing your stuff, then you're pretty good at it. So all I'm saying is just be a little bit more honest with yourself. If you don't really understand branding and marketing, it's totally fine. There's a bunch of people who do. So just ask one of them. You don't always have to pay for it. A lot of times you can just ask somebody who you look at them and you go, they're getting this, and I don't see how theirs is any different than ours.
It's probably a whole education at just Brady Shear's YouTube channel. I mean,
yeah,
and that's all free.
So there you go.
Yeah. Last
image
thing,
and look matters. Yeah.
The last thing is very important. Just so, and it's almost counterintuitive, but I want you to explain it. How can listening well help build momentum in your church? Just being a good listener.
Yes. Okay. So people who don't feel heard, there's just so much psychology in this, right? They have fears, they have hurts, they have hangups. They have these things that are blocking their full-hearted support of the church. And so if you take a new church, it is good to sit down and just listen to what people are feeling. Listen to their story. Just ask stories. You can do this individually. You can make a list of people. Just ask some folks like, who should I be listening to? And you'll get a big list of people. You can also do this in larger group settings where you just get people in the room and you come up with a topic. You don't need to be talking the whole time. And you listen. What is something you love about our church? What are some things that are scary about change? When we say worship style, what comes to mind? We just had one of these. I call these whiteboard sessions. And I started off by saying, look, this is just talking. You're talking to me. I'm talking to you. We're not voting on anything. I just want to hear what you have to say. I want others to hear what you have to say. So I love these things. There's no prep really needed other than just kind of come up with a topic in your mind. you can also kind of shepherd them in those moments. And churches that are building momentum, the people feel heard. They feel listened to. And when you're listening to them, you can hear things like, here's what I think we should do. Or I have this idea, I'm willing to do it, but nobody let me do it. That kind of stuff. Then you can kind of hear some strengths that are going in there. So I think listening sessions are really, really helpful to teach you more about the people, but also it just clears out the mental and the emotional blocks that are keeping them from being this big advocate that's out in the community. They just want to be ministered to, and listening is one of the easiest ways to minister to people.
Yeah, and I'll say one more way to build momentum to be a comeback church, to help you do that first point that we talked about, which is outreach, evangelism. There is a program that can help you, and they do sponsor the show. We're very grateful that they sponsor the show. But all of you, if you're sitting here going, okay, I want to do more outreach. I want to be an outwardly focused church. I want opportunities for evangelism. Upward Sports. This is the way to go. They will help you use sports as a bridge into your community. They've got an exciting offer here. So really, you should take them up on this. It's their 2024 Sports Startup Grant, $500. So go to upward.org/churchanswers. Schedule your call. Get that $500. Start building momentum in your church. Start doing an outwardly focus. They can walk you through everything. They've got all sorts of sports programs. They've got all sorts of access to tools that you can use. Their team is phenomenal. So this is only for our listeners, only for EST listeners. So $500 sports grant. Go to upward.org/churchanswers in order to schedule your call. Thank you, Upward, for sponsoring today's episode.
Yeah, thank you, Upward. I want to finish with just a side note. We started with the same thing. Is this sleazy? Is this, is this kind of slimy? We're just creating momentum.
Preach the word, Josh. That's how you grow your church. Just preach the word.
What I would say is this. People love passion. And if you're not passionate and happy about your church, then what's wrong? Like sometimes just be the biggest advocate and fan of your church. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think that's what shepherds should do. But when I talk to guys and other leaders, they'll sometimes go, I just don't know how. So that's what we're saying here. This is how you do this. But yes, preach the word. Get your polity in line. Get your theology in line. But this is how you let the world know that you really love this church and you want them to be a part of it. So thanks for talking, Sam. Thanks for listening, listener. We hope that you will catch us next week on the next episode of EST. Until then, give us a shout out on Twitter or X and Facebook, Instagram, wherever it is that you do social media. Let your friends know. Get that word out there. We'll catch you next week.
Upward Sports equips churches to run self-sustaining sports ministries in their communities. Whether you're a sports fanatic or on staff at a church, Upward Sports will give you all the tools you need to run a first-class sports ministry that allows you to reach families in your community. Upward Sports offers basketball, soccer, flag football, cheerleading, volleyball, baseball, and softball through league and camp offerings. At Upward Sports, we want to help your church make a difference and give you increased opportunities to share the gospel. Learn more today at upward.org/churchanswers.